Hello and welcome to a Friday edition of Brewers Daily. Lots to get to here on the show as we're heading into the weekend. Got the spring breakout starting tonight here. Also news on Brandon Woodruff and the roster picture here as we are now less than 1 week out from opening day. Lots of stuff changing here as we know it, including kind of the surprising news that just came down on Thursday that the Brewers have optioned Blake Perkins to AAA Nashville. Now, I know we just talked on yesterday's show about how the outfield battles seem to be coming down to Brandon Lockridge and Garrett Mitchell. That was the way that Pat Murphy was talking about it, how Mitchell needed to be able to play basically back-to-backs, play every single day, have that kind of durability through these final few days of spring training in order to hold off a Brandon Lockridge. And instead, Blake Perkins is the one that gets sent down before we really even get that chance to see Mitchell in these consecutive days here and see how things are going with that. So it's definitely a surprise considering Pat Murphy had told us previously, he told us last year he'd send himself down before he sends Blake Perkins down to the minor leagues. Well, Perkins is going down to Nashville and Pat Murphy is not going with him. So that ends up not happening here. But I also want to kind of dig into why this ended up being the case. And I kind of touched on it a little bit yesterday, but of course the premise was more on Mitchell and Lockridge. But when you look at these three guys, okay, that final outfield spot is coming, the final two outfield spots coming down to Garrett Mitchell, Blake Perkins, and Brandon Lockridge. Garrett Mitchell is a left-handed hitter. Brandon Lockridge is a right-handed hitter. Blake Perkins is a switch hitter. Okay, so he can handle both. So you'd think he'd be fine either way, but Blake Perkins is better as a right-handed hitter. He hits lefties better than he hits righties when he's at the plate as a left-hander. So in order to kind of make that platoon work, in order to have the lefty-righty where you can go either direction and feel good, you have Garrett Mitchell there as the lefty, as your lefty option, and Brandon Lockridge supplies it there on the right-handed side because that's where you would use Blake Perkins, and the Brewers simply feel at this moment that Lockridge provides a better option than Perkins, at least offensively. I mean, defensively, both are really good. Perkins obviously very strong defensively, but so is Lockridge. So that aids his case as well. And wanting to have that left-handed bat potentially at the position, because that's not the strong side for Perkins, that leads to the Brewers wanting to stick with Garrett Mitchell as that left-handed hitting center fielder. So Mitchell ends up getting the nod, despite kind of struggling stats-wise this spring. Hasn't been able to really get going at the plate. I mean, it is spring training stats. They really only translate to so much. I mean, there's only so much you can really take from some of those spring training stats. But also, Brandon Lockridge has played incredibly well, adding a 2 RBI double on Thursday night in that game against the Rangers. So Lockridge has parlayed this very strong spring into a roster spot. And this does lock in Brandon Lockridge as our Brad Nelson Award winner for the spring. Congratulations to Brandon Lockridge. You win the Brad Nelson Award, and you win a roster spot here, at least to start the season. Who knows how long that'll be the case. I still believe that Blake Perkins will be up with this team throughout the season. I don't think he's going to spend the entire year down in Nashville. He's someone that the Brewers still do like. And maybe we'll see how long the hot stretch runs here for Brandon Lockridge. If it runs short, kind of like previous winners of the Brad Nelson Award, such as Brad Nelson, such as Vinny Capra and the like over the past few years. If it comes like that, then we could see Perkins up here fairly shortly. But still, it's very disappointing for Perk. It's certainly an unexpected way that this all ended up going down. But Brandon Lockridge has forced his way onto this Brewers opening day roster with an incredibly strong spring training. And he'll be platooning out there. He'll be sharing some time with Garrett Mitchell, as Mitchell is the lefty part of that group, and Lockridge provides the right-handed option because you got strong defenders either way. And it's an unfortunate setback for Perkins there in a very strong outfield group that the Brewers have. And Perkins is hitting 290 this spring. Perkins, it's not like Perkins was playing bad. He was hitting the ball well. He was getting hits. He was 9 for 31. I mean, he was having a pretty strong spring, all things considered. But Brandon Lockridge was just having a stronger one. And that's where the Brewers are going for the time being. So Lockridge gets a spot, and he gets the Brad Nelson Award. And he also kind of wins it almost by default because the other strong contender for the Brad Nelson Award, Tyler Black, was among the other camp cuts that the Brewers made here on Thursday as well prior to the game against the Rangers. So they send out Blake Perkins. They also option Tyler Black to AAA Nashville. Not really a surprise because, again, as we've talked about on the show, that his roster spot, his role on the team is currently occupied by Jake Bauers. And Bauers is having a strong spring as well. He's not going anywhere. So Tyler Black is going to have to bide his time again to see if he can get an opportunity. And it's going to take somehow Jake Bauers getting out of the way, or it's going to take the Brewers deciding to trade Tyler Black, which I'm not sure if that's going to end up being the case. I still think that they should for Tyler Black's own sake, but I still think there's a very real possibility they hold on to him. They let Jake Bauers walk either in free agency or he struggles enough at some point in the season that they just cut him loose and they roll with Tyler Black. But I think they're still going to hold on to him for a little bit longer. But Tyler Black among the camp cuts here as well, despite playing really, really well this spring. Also among the cuts, Logan Henderson. Not entirely surprised there as well. He's been dealing with a bout of elbow soreness, just kind of trying to get back into game action. So for him to be optioned down makes a whole bunch of sense. Seemed to be on the outside looking in of the initial rotation picture. So he's going to go to Nashville. He'll be getting regular starts. And as soon as an opening pops up in this Brewers rotation and the timing works out for him, then I think he's going to end up getting the call here as well. The Brewers, we're going to see him in Milwaukee at some point this season. Also, among the camp cuts, Cooper Pratt was reassigned to minor league camp as well. Also not a surprise, now that Bryce Terang is back from Team USA in the World Baseball Classic, you don't need that extra infielder there. So Cooper Pratt, he was always going to be starting the year in AAA. He was always going to be down in the minor leagues. He was just staying in camp because the Brewers needed that middle infield depth while Bryce Terang was away at the World Baseball Classic. Now that he's back, Pratt can head back to the minor league side. So those were the rounds of cuts here. The Brewers are getting really kind of right down to it here when it comes to the numbers that they have in camp. They have 14 healthy position players that remain, and there's going to be 13 on the roster. The 14th extra one is non-roster invitee Reese McGuire, the third extra catcher. McGuire's not really battling for a spot with Gary Sanchez. That spot's pretty much going to be Gary's. So Sanchez, I think, is just kind of there as a formality until William Contreras kind of gets back and being ready to go into action, and then they'll send McGuire over to the minor league side. But so that leaves your position player group pretty much set. And then when you look at the position player side or the pitching side, you have 18 pitchers officially remaining in camp. Now, granted, Quinn Priester is going to start the season on the IL, as is Craig Yoho and Rob Zastryzny. So that leaves 15 pitchers remaining in camp. And for 13 spots. So those final couple of spots, that final spot on the pitching staff, there's going to be one guy that gets it, two guys that end up getting left off here, and I think that's going to be between Shane Drowan, Robert Gasser, most likely, and Brandon Sproat. I think those three are still battling for that last rotation spot, and I think a lot of that, too, in terms of who gets that final spot in the rotation, or final spot on the pitching staff, depends on what happens here with Brandon Woodruff. And we've talked about this as well in terms of how things are going to be looking. He had his start against the Rangers on Thursday night, and it didn't really go particularly well. He was scheduled for 4 ups, and he did make 4 ups. He pitched in parts of 4 innings, wasn't able to complete the 3rd or the 4th, and ends up exiting after 62 pitches, and his stuff really started to diminish there in that 4th inning, which is really kind of concerning to me and to the Brewers as well, I'm sure, as they look at this, because as the game started, Woodruff was looking pretty good. His fastball was about 92, 94. And it's like, okay, he's getting some movement, looking pretty good there. Fastball 92, 94. Changeup, 83, 84. Curveball, 76, 77. Like he's got the off-speed stuff, looking pretty good. And then next thing you know, when you get down to the fourth inning, that fastball that was 92, 94 is now at around 87, 88 miles an hour, which is quite the drop-off that he's going to have. The curveball that was 76, 77 was down to 72, 73. The other one that he had, the changeup, was 83, 84, then down to 80, 81. So lost several miles an hour on all of his pitches, and gave up a couple of home runs as well. Just kind of didn't have that effectiveness and lost that durability and lost that velocity fairly early on. It only had about 60-some pitches and into the fourth inning, which is kind of concerning. There still needs to be more build-up potentially for him to be ready to go. Just seeing the stuff drop off significantly. I mean, we're not going to see him back to the 97, 98, 99 miles an hour pitcher that he was before. I think that version of Brandon Woodruff is gone. And he knows how to pitch. Okay, he knows, even with diminished stuff, he knows how to get some guys out. He did get 8 swings and misses, but still, that is kind of concerning there to see his stuff trend downward so quickly. Now, granted, it was 104 degrees out there in Phoenix, Arizona, so maybe that played a factor in it as well. Maybe there's not quite as much to read into that durability issue, but it doesn't necessarily lead to confidence that Woodruff will be ready to go as opening day is coming up in less than a week now. So that could be something where they give him a couple more days, whether it's putting him at the back of the rotation, giving him start number 5 on the season rather than game number 1 to just kind of get him that little extra bit of time. I'm not sure if they would do an IL stint at all, but still, seeing the way that his stuff drops off so significantly there somewhat early on, that is concerning for his durability as a starter to be able to pitch into the 5th, 6th inning. It could just take some more time for him to get built back up and to maintain that velocity deeper in the games. But these kinds of struggles are something to watch because he has had that major shoulder surgery. Being further away from it, you'd think things would be getting better, a little bit more improved. They have slow walked him through this progression this spring. So not entirely surprising, but still, with opening day less than a week away, it does raise some concerns about his viability for opening day. So that's that could lead to Jacob Misiorowski being your opening day starter. We'll see what kind of decision the Brewers officially make, but I imagine we'll find out fairly soon here on that one. And finally here, just to wrap things up, just to end on a positive note, right? Because we don't want to end on something negative. We're going into the weekend. It's March Madness. Got a whole bunch of basketball going on. We got opening day coming up next week. We want to think positive things, okay? We want to be happy here. The snow is melting. It's been warm out. So I want to talk about the spring breakout game that the Brewers have here tonight. They got one tonight. They also got one Sunday night as well, which is going to be a lot of fun. 2 spring breakout games with all these Brewers prospects that they have. Jesus Made, Luis Pena, Cooper Pratt, Andrew Fisher. All these stud names that the Brewers have. Bishop Letson is going to be there. I mean, you've got the best of the best in this Brewers farm system who are going to be performing in these games to showcase themselves against other top prospects across the league. I'm very excited for it. So you got spring breakout tonight. You got it Sunday night as well. So 2 for the price of 1. A lot of organizations only get 1 of these games. The Brewers are getting 2. And I think it's not official, but I think it's just because the league knows the Brewers have too many good prospects. It's like, we need to give these guys 2 games because there's just so many of them. Like the Brewers have just a load of prospects. So they get 2 games. So you get one tonight, one Sunday night. Going to be a lot of fun. I cannot wait for them. And it's going to be great to see these guys showcase themselves against the best of the best other prospects across Major League Baseball. So looking forward to that, especially because my bracket is already busted. I'm sure yours is as well. Wisconsin, figure it out, guys. I mean, losing to High Point in the first round. I mean, they out Badgers the Badgers. I mean, it was terrible. But yeah, and so many other parts of my bracket just absolutely going by the wayside. Ohio State ruined perfection in the first game for me. Way to go, guys. Appreciate that. So, yeah. Oh, well. But, hey, baseball is coming up. Opening day is on Thursday. It's next week. So when we talk again, when you see me again, it is the week of opening day. We will be in the week of regular season baseball returning. Cannot wait for that. Be sure to subscribe, get notified every single time a new episode drops. Follow me on Twitter at dgasper24. I'll have coverage of the exhibition games next week, and then also opening day as well, being there at American Family Field. Cannot wait to see these guys in action and get this regular season off and rolling. So be sure to follow Brewers Daily for all of it, because we'll be there throughout the entire season. And appreciate you watching, and we'll see you again next time for another episode of Brewers Daily.